We'll just go through a little bit about the different stages of life of someone with cerebral palsy, and then we'll break for lunch, and when we come back, we'll go into all the sports side of things. So like we said, cerebral palsy is a lifelong condition, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't change throughout someone's life. So in childhood is a really influential part of someone growing up with cerebral palsy. Diagnosis of cerebral palsy usually happens in childhood, and it's usually picked up by parents might notice that their child is stiff to move or is not meeting milestones like not crawling or not walking. If a parent has had a difficult birth, so if the baby is deemed at risk of cerebral palsy, there is a test that you can do before age of 3 months. So that's now being done in the UK and in Australia and New Zealand to really diagnose as early as possible, and that's called the General Movement Assessment. So it's a way of assessing a baby's movement to see if they have cerebral palsy before a parent might pick it up. So as soon as a child is diagnosed with cerebral palsy, they will probably begin physiotherapy, and that's to help with their movements, to provide any equipment that might be necessary. And they also might start on that medication which alters the high tone. So if they do have spasticity and hypertonia, they might start on medication to help loosen their muscles. As we said, depending on their needs, they might have surgery on their muscles or their bones. And they also, in the UK and in Europe, they will often be given splints on their legs to help with their walking and help control the growth of their muscles. Fatigue, tiredness can be a real big problem with children with cerebral palsy. And that's because their muscles are having to work harder than their peers, but also they have all these other appointments to go to. They have to go to physio, they might be seeing a doctor, so they might have time off school, and that can all affect their tiredness and things. So in teenagers, things that are really important are that teenagers will be going through big growth spurts. So as you grow, your muscles can become even tighter. So that means that physiotherapy and orthotics are becoming even more important. But in the UK at least, we often have teenagers not wanting to take part in physio, not wanting to wear splints because they go to secondary school and they don't want to be different from their classmates. Exams and school stresses can be challenging because if they have trouble writing, like we said, writing exams becomes more of a challenge and they might need an assistant. And also in the UK and in Europe, children get lots of therapy, but once you become an adult, options become really few. And so it's difficult when you move from having therapy as a child into adult services. So like we said, quite often orthotics and splints aren't worn anymore because teenagers don't want to. And also sometimes in teenagers they might need more bony or muscle surgery. So at that time physiotherapy is really important. And also as people with cerebral palsy become teenagers, quite often they suffer from loneliness. And this is because no matter how mild or severe their cerebral palsy is, it can be difficult for them to know where they fit into society. Because like we say, they might not have an intellectual impairment, but then they're put with other children with intellectual impairment, but they're still different from people with able bodies, so it can be really difficult for them to know where to fit in. And that's why sport and physical activity can be so important, because it can be a path to new social groups and also a sense of empowerment and independence when they learn that they can do sport or activity. And then into adulthood. So like we say, cerebral palsy is not life-threatening, so people with children with cerebral palsy will become adults adults with cerebral palsy. But going into adulthood is the same as the rest of us with able bodies. That painful joints can become common, things like osteoarthritis, as there's more strain on some joints. Fatigue and tiredness can be more of an issue because the muscles are getting older and they might become more tight. Gaining, even in the UK, gaining employment can be difficult because of the problem with a lack of inclusion. In treatments in adulthood, muscle tone treatments can continue. Some final surgery, like bony surgery, might be needed in adulthood. And as with teenagers, some mental health issues such as loneliness and depression and anxiety can be common because of the problems with getting employment and also problems with knowing where you fit in society. Which again means that exercise in adulthood and physical activity is even more important to keep the body moving and also to keep up the social groups that can come with sport. And many adults with cerebral palsy do live independent lives, but those with more severe cerebral palsy impairments will be relying on care throughout their lives, which can become a really big issue as their parents then get older. And if their parents are too old then to look after them, that can cause some difficulties. So again, really stressing that physical activity, both just recreationally for enjoyment, but also competitive and competitive sport, can really impact every part of someone's life because it can improve their health and their well-being, their mental well-being, and their quality of life. It's pretty much the same as what as an adult, except just to remember that people with cerebral palsy getting older is the same as the rest of us getting older. The only thing is that if certain impairments may increase with age, so if they already have a hearing impairment, it might get worse with age, or a visual impairment might get worse with age, and the joint pain can become more of a problem as well.
Okay, so I'm going to go through all of the sporty bits this afternoon, or now and after lunch. So, starting off, going to look at the para-sports in permanent types. So, I think you will all know that there are 10 eligible impairments. So you've got impaired muscle power, impaired passive range of movement, limb deficiency, leg length deficiency, short stature, hypotonia, ataxia, apoptosis, visual impairment, and intellectual impairment. For the cerebral palsy classes, or the 30s classes, we are looking at hypotonia, ataxia, and apoptosis only. Okay, so they are your 3 impairment groups. So the 3 types, hypotonia, it's actually when it's hard to stretch out your muscles. So I can stretch actually my own muscle, but if someone stretched actually mine, they would find it increasingly hard to do. So actually that's a little bit about actually mine. Ataxia is the lack of coordination and the muscle actually movements. Okay, and apoptosis is when you generally unbalanced, as we have as we have discussed and we have seen in the videos. Okay, so it's a quick case study on hypertonia. So it's a 26-year-old male who's a swimmer, and he said it's a chance to forget about his EP when he's in water, and it just actually makes his confidence and his ability to participate in swimming. Having sport actually really helps him. So we actually saw Gavin in the video before, doing the race running. He is 19. He said, what age did you get involved in sport? And he was actually 5 actually when he got involved in race running. What actually made him get interested in sport? And he said, growing up, I was desperate to play sport. All I wanted to do when I was younger was to be able to run around with my friends, because I saw how much fun they were having, and race running has helped him do that. Has he ever had any barriers? He said the biggest barrier was finding something he could participate in and do it independently. What effect has sport had on your page about your life? Being involved in sport has definitely had a positive impact on his cerebral palsy. Sport has massively improved his fitness and his strength. And then what has been active given you outside of the sporting world? And he has said that sport has given him so much beyond training and competing. It has improved his confidence, and he has actually made friends from across the world.